But before we begin, before we get to the flower communion or any of it today, I ask you to settle into your seats, to make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes if you're comfortable, and hear the sound of the bell to bring you into a place ready for worship.
Chalice flame, burning bright, symbol of my own light, light around me, light aglow, light that shines as I learn and grow.
We now light the chalice, the symbol of our living faith. If you are joining us online, we encourage you to light a candle or a chalice of your own. And I invite you all to hear today's chalice lighting words of blessing for flower communion, written by DeVernon Boblett. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last over the snows, over the centuries, over the heavy feet of cattle and of soldiers treading down the fragile places of the earth. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last over the tangled branches, over the withered stem, over the tearing thorns of roses and barbed wire. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last, even over the hand that gathers it, cuts it off from life, from roots, from the memory and taste of iron and tears in the soil. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last over the closed rooms that are not its home, over efforts to domesticate its wild truth, over the vain words of priests and poets. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last over us, over pasts and futures, over words and silences, over deaths and lives, placing them all in their proper place, restoring to all things their joyful smallness. Blessed be the flower that triumphs at last. I encourage you all to sing along our opening hymn, number 305, De Coloris, led by our song leader, Diane.
is one. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun.
Here we go in Spanish.
De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es al arcoíris que vimos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
Our story this morning is entitled The Water Bearer's Garden. Now you see there was a water bearer, and they had 2 large pots, which hung at the end, each end of a pole, which they carried over their shoulders. But at the end of a long walk, from the stream all the way to the top of the hill, there was one cracked pot that arrived only half full, while the other pot was perfectly whole and always delivered a full portion of water. Now this went on daily for 2 years as the water bearer brought the water from the stream to the top of the hill. And of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments. It was accomplishing the goal that it was made for. But the poor cracked pot, they were ashamed of their own imperfection, and miserable that it was only able to accomplish only half of what it was made for. And after 2 years, it finally spoke up to the water bearer one day by the stream and said, "I'm so ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." The water bearer asked, "Why? What are you ashamed of?" "Well, I've only been able for these past 2 years to accomplish only half of the goal that I was made for. Only half of my water makes it to the top of the hill. And because of my flaws, you have to do all this work, and you don't get the full value of me." Well, the water bearer, in great compassion, said to the cracked pot, "As we walk up the hill, we fill this water at the stream. As we walk up this top of the hill, I want you to pay attention to your side of the path. I want you to notice all of the beautiful flowers that are growing along that side of the path." And as they went up the hill, the cracked pot watched as one beautiful wildflower after the other appeared on its way up the path. And it was in awe of this beauty. But when they reached the top of the hill, the cracked pot realized that, again, half of its water had leaked. And again, it felt ashamed. Again, it apologized. The water bearer said, "But did you not see the beautiful flowers on the path along the way?" And the cracked pot said, "Oh, I did, but I only accomplished half of my goal." And the water bearer said, "You see, I've known about your crack, about your flaw. I've known about it. And you know what? It's beautiful. Your flaw is beautiful because if you noticed, there are no flowers on the perfect pot side of the path. You may only be able to bring half a load up to the final destination, but you water these beautiful flower seeds as you make the climb up the hill." And it ended by saying, we all, every single one of us, have our flaws. We're all cracked pots. In the great web of life, nothing goes to waste. Don't be afraid of your flaws. Acknowledge them. And you too can be a case for beauty. Know that in our weaknesses we find strength. Blessed be, and amen.
Join me in a state of prayer. Look to the God of your understanding. We pray for a world where anyone who wants to bear a child may choose to do so, and for a world where that person has access to the health care, the material, mental, and spiritual support that such an endeavor entails. I pray for a world where people who do not wish to bear a child have free and ready access to education, to various methods of birth control, and to all health care, including abortion, required for them to make the choices that are the best, the safest, and the most sound for themselves. I pray for a world where every child is fed and housed and educated and safe and loved. I pray for a world where every child is free from gun violence, from systemic racism and injustice, from deepening economic inequality that keeps too many of our children from thriving. And beyond that, I pray for a world where no parent, where no person who loves children, regardless of their status as a parent, must live to see the children of this world sent off to kill one another on the field of war. We lament the threats to loss of autonomy, of survival across the world in the face of brutal invasion of sovereign nations around the world. We keenly feel the grief of each individual faced with no safe choices. And as we grieve and lament, may we pour out that energy, pour out our rage, our sadness, our horror. May we take this energy within us and honor it. And may we take up the alchemy of community to channel our rage, our sadness, and our horror into healing our broken, breaking world.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Our reading this morning is Julia Ward Howe's original Mother's Day proclamation from 1870. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women, to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each learning after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. Thus ends our reading.
Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. Acknowledging that the gendered language in 1870 was the standard, when Julia Ward Howe wrote this original Mother's Day proclamation, these words feel deeply relevant to me today. We will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Y'all, I'm going to be honest. There's a lot going on in my heart this week. It's been hard for me to find peace. Maybe it's that way for you too. And in our prayers this morning, and in turning our minds and hearts to peace in Ukraine and peace throughout the world and peace in the bodies, minds, and spirits of all people, I keep coming back to that line. What irrelevant agencies are deciding our great questions? And perhaps most importantly, to whom are those agencies accountable? It's easy to feel a helplessness paired with rage as we see people in Ukraine given no choice but to fight or flee or die. It's easy to feel those emotions too when faced with continual turns of injustice within our own borders and the sanctity of our own lives. And yet, I return to this part of the Mother's Day proclamation again and again as well. let them meet first to bewail and commemorate the dead. Lamentation is a sacred act. Disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. We've had a lot of thoughts about justice this week. And we have a different way to lament now than existed in 1870. We have social media. Places and platforms where the rending of garments and the gnashing of teeth can be amplified to an audience of thousands, tens of thousands, more. We can and we must honor our pain. The loss of peace, both on the global stage and the personal territory of our hearts, is a pain felt keenly and lived deeply. Pain in the body is a sign that something requires our attention. Injustice in the world works the same way. It is a signal that something requires our attention. What are we to do, however, when there are several somethings that require our attention? Maybe, perhaps countless somethings. We choose. We choose to know the truth that the individual is not and was never meant to fix every woe, every harm, every injustice. We choose to acknowledge that with our own single point of view, we don't even know them all. We cannot. None of us can see the whole mountain at once. We can only see that part of the path before us or those glimpses through the parting clouds. We join with others in order to enlarge our view. We set aside social media when we feel like we cannot stop scrolling. Twitter, as far as I'm concerned, is another irrelevant agency. To the best that we can, we strive for peace within our hearts and within the hearts of those that we are in relationship with, so that we may build strength for the work to come and also a safe haven for rest from the work. Julia Ward Howe, a Unitarian, an abolitionist, and an advocate for women's suffrage, wrote her proclamation in response to the loss and devastation of the Civil War and the newly outbroken at the time Franco-Prussian War in 1870. Mother's Day did not become a national holiday until 1914, well after her 1870 proclamation. And along the way, it lost its identity as an impassioned call for peace and justice in the world. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. More than 150 years after Howe wrote these words, we receive the words devastated earth in a new way. The violence inherent in war, in the battle for primacy over land and sovereignty, is a harsh reminder that in fact none of us own the earth, and that the earth itself is harmed in ways beyond measure by our extractive culture that believes possession can occur by force. And this week, in the United States of America, my mind and heart are drawn helplessly to this violence of possession, of the fierce battle of ownership. Who's allowed to make choices about their own bodies and lives? Who will suffer the most from the action of an agency that feels to me in this moment unaccountable for the action it allows to occur to those residing within its influence? I have never needed to fight to defend my home or the people I love, and for that I am grateful. I have never needed to fight to get the health care that I need. And for that, I am grateful. I acknowledge the privilege in these statements and still hold that these two statements should stand as ideals for all people everywhere. And how are we supposed to do it? How are we supposed to find the peace within our hearts? That peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace that comes from both within and without. How are we to find that respite, repair ourselves, and rest for the work? Cover those cracks in the pot, maybe with gold. Do we find that rest, that peace? Or do we work for it? I believe we are called to do both. We find the respite to prepare for the challenges this world presents by fully inhabiting our life of faith, both within this community and when we're by ourselves or out in the larger community. Unitarian Universalists strive to show up again and again. We try for peace, we try for justice, and we try again and again, returning and returning in each turn of the year and in every season, like the flowers of spring. In our congregation, we observe 4 rituals of communion throughout the year, aligning them with the 4 seasons and the 4 elements. Now, in spring, we celebrate our flower communion, which represents the element of earth. As we honor earth and all the gifts therein, we remain humbly inspired by the resilience of the flowers. They arrive again and again, reminding us to honor every color, shape, and size in the world, reminding us of the unique gifts that all receive in grace. And to prepare for our flower communion, we'll sing our hymn number 76, For Flowers That Bloom About Our Feet. And during this song, if you came in and have a flower for our flower communion that you haven't had a chance to put in here, come on up while we're singing and go ahead and find some space for it, and then we'll have it for part of our flower communion.
For flowers that bloom about our feet, for tender grass so fresh and sweet, for song of bird and hum of bee, for all things fair we hear or see. Giver of all, we thank thee. For bloom of stream and bloom of sky, for pleasant shade of branches high, for fragrant air and cooling breeze, for beauty of the blooming trees. Giver of all, we thank thee. For this new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love and friends, for everything thy goodness sends. Giver of all, we thank thee.
Our Unitarian Universalist Flower Communion, of which we are about to take part, was celebrated originally in the year 1923 and was created by Dr. Norbert Čapek, founder of the modern Unitarian movement in Czechoslovakia. On the last Sunday before the summer break, all the children and the adults participated in this very colorful and beautiful ritual, which honors the expression of the humanity-affirming principles of our faith. However, when Nazis took control of Czechoslovakia and Prague in 1940, Dr. Čapek's gospel of the inherent worth and dignity of all people was seen, as Nazi court records show, to be too dangerous to the Reich to be allowed to live. Dr. Čapek was sent to Dachau, where he was killed the next year during a Nazi medical experiment. This gentleman suffered a cruel death, but his message of human hope and decency lives on through this flower communion, which is widely celebrated today, one of the more popular of our UU communions. The ceremony was brought over to the United States by his wife, the Reverend Maya Čapek, and it is a noble and meaning-filled ritual which we are about to recreate. And we will now bless these flowers with one of Dr. Čapek's original prayers to help us remember the principles and the dreams for which he died.
And we know that within our tradition, all can bless, so if anyone who feels moved to do so will hold a hand out toward the flowers at the front of the room as we ask. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world.
It is now time for us to share in the flower communion. So I ask that each of you, in turn, and we'll start from the forward and move our way back, come forward and approach the vase as you do so. Please do so quietly, reverently, with a sense of how important it is for each of us to address our world with gentleness and love and kindness. I ask that you select a flower that is different from the one that you brought. We have an abundance of flowers. And as you do so, you take your chosen flower. I ask that you note its particular beauty, its shape, something different from the rest. It's a gift that someone else has brought. It represents that person's unique humanity and therefore deserves our kindest touch. Let us share this UU ritual of oneness and love. And for those of you joining us online, we encourage you to consider flowers and other gifts of the earth with quiet reverence, feeling yourself a part of this community in spirit, if not today in body. And as you move forward, Reverend Jen will add another prayer, but do so. Don't worry about us. Come so forward reverently. I invite you, Connie, come forward to start. Move backward. Karen, if you'd like to come forward. Quietly and reverently, choosing the flower that calls forth to you.
These are more words of Dr. Čapek's. I have lightly edited them to make them more soothing to our 21st century consciences. In the name of Providence, which implants in the seed the future of the tree, and in the hearts of all people, the longing to live in love. In the name of the highest, in whom we move and who makes the parents and the children, the friends and the chosen family who they are. In the name of sages and great religious leaders who sacrificed their lives to hasten the coming of peace and justice, let us renew our resolution sincerely to be true siblings regardless of any kind of bar which estranges one from another. In this holy resolution, may we be strengthened, knowing that we are God's family, that one Spirit, the Spirit of love, unites us. And may we endeavor for a more whole and a more joyful life.
Encourage you all as you sit with your unique flower, appreciate its uniqueness and its beauty, and receive the gift that it is giving you.
We'll invite you now into our next hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken.
Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. The rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Please join us in extinguishing our chalice and your home chalices, if you have lit them, with words we share every week. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. We carry these in our hearts until we are together again.
We extinguish the chalice here, so that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again.
We have arrived at the end of our worship. Our service is about to begin. Though it may be hard to find, I hope you find peace in your hearts this week, peace in your community, in the care and companionship of your loved ones, your family, your chosen family, your friends. Let their light, like the light of our community's flame, be a blessing to you and to us all. So may it be.
For everyone born a place at the table, for everyone born clean water and bread, a shelter, a space, a safe place for growing, for everyone born a star overhead, and all will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. Yes, all will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy. Justice and joy.